Okay. Okay, here it is. You could see my desktop, I believe now. It's got the PowerPoint open.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay,
Got it.
thanks. We'll continue with where we left the last time. I believe we were doing the context, and explicit and implicit context is our topic today. By definition, we know the difference between what is explicit. Explicit is what is expressed and put or inserted inside the address bar. Or when you're doing your search, your key terms, your domains that you're searching within, all of that is explicitly mentioned. Implicit is where the search engine is going to try to add more context or give your search a better context on its own, and that is all mechanically inclined. We've done this part, so we'd look at the implicit signals. Implicit signals, I think we started with a list that I showed you before, which is where it is collecting information like purchase histories, application use, location, and so on. So all these signals has a very profound meaning on the ranking algorithm, as well as the quality of results that you get, the experience of results based on localization of what is intended versus what is delivered. It basically has to be in sync with each other, and what is delivered is not in your control, but what you have searched for, exactly depending on the way in which you've written your search query, is responsible for the other part of results, which are more controlled and what you expect. Implicit signals are shown here just as a concept in this chart. You could see that we have divided these. There are these two headings, rather, that are giving you the details of the information under it, as these boxes are sort of set right under the explicit context. And this is where these boxes are going to explain what explicit is, versus for the same search query, what could be the implicit context, that means added by the search engine. So the box under implicit context right over here, we call it intent semantics. That is what is the search delivering or is paying attention to as more localized or better user experience result. And this is the box under the heading implicit context. So let's start with explicit context. Explicit is what I've written in the search box. For instance, I wrote the word Java, but this is not complete. We need to give it a context so that it becomes meaningful. Therefore, we will see what would be the behavior of the search engine in addressing this single word Java, or what could be some of the confusion or ambiguities when only one word is used. So if Java is one word, the primary context needs to be added, so it gives it an absolute command to the search term that you want, essentially to be contained in those as primary keywords. So let's suppose in primary context, we have word software, coffee, and island. So there are these three this is a choice. Right now, I'm just showing you a choice of what might happen, and where we are going to turn this query into more meaningful query. We are going to add another context, which we call secondary context. So let's suppose the primary context or the primary terms could be, let's in one combination. These combinations are denoted by these arrows or these connections that you're looking at with different colors. These are all different permutations, combinations of how the words might interact and form the explicit context. So supposing I use the word Java software and not coffee or not island, then there would be a secondary context, which means that you need to reinforce your primary context by adding things like, what are you looking for in Java software? If you're looking for training or a program, to run or to find files for, or if it's a software program alone, then you're going to add the context or secondary context word program. Another secondary context could be training. So depending on whether or not you are giving it a complete meaning by translation of intent through choice of words. So Java software training could be one, Java software program could be another. Similarly, if it is a Java coffee, then the results that you would see, or not the results, let's just call it the structure of the query in the beginning. You will have to ensure that the outcome or whatever the search engine might require for you to add to give it a secondary context, you have those words set, or have somehow by using, let's suppose, just the primary context like Java coffee. When you get the search results, you could see that different results are coming from a coffee house called Tim Hortons. It could be a coffee bar somewhere that is coming in your snippets, or if it or it could be coffee beans. It just depends on the first layer of search results that would give you an idea of how the search is interpreting it. And based on that, you would be able to hash out or figure out which of these secondary keywords are getting added to the primary keywords. In other words, the secondary keywords can be figured out through the outcome of your first instance of search results by just using, let's say, Java coffee. So between these three choices, you know that the search engine is now unable to pinpoint exactly what you're looking for, if it's Tim Hortons or coffee bar or coffee beans, either of the three. So that is where you will have to either filter out or make your search query more focused by eliminating certain words. When we do our elimination, that's a process where we are going to use operators. But right now, the concept of primary and secondary keywords is such that you understand that anytime your intent has to be translated, it would look for both the primary and secondary context. That's when you would use more than a few words, or 3 or 4 words, if it is a broad search query. If it's a longer one, then the scenario changes. But for now, let's suppose we are talking about 3 to 4 words. So when we come back to the first one, which is software training, you would see that at the time when the training part is inserted into your query, you would see that certain results are coming based on location. So it is going to give you the location of the geographical area where you're searching from. It will automatically start to throw in prices. You would find that there could be somewhat reputation, reviews, or opinions on the training center or wherever there is a local. Whenever the first in the first instance of your search, you will see that these results contain an implicit element, which means the location that you have not disclosed, the price you have not asked for, reputation or reviews or any of those things you have not specifically mentioned in your explicit search, where the primary and secondary context remains intact. So in a way, what you are viewing is a result that has has an added ingredient, which is coming from the automation of the search engine. Similarly, if you're using Java software program, then again, there is a location, price, and reputation. These three will start to show up as if they're more, considered the missing part or the missing piece of info, or an implicit or implied context that's added by the search engine on its own without you mentioning it in your search query. So this becomes intent semantics or implicit context. If you've written Java coffee, let's say if it's Tim Hortons, for instance, this is where you want to mention, a specific place of coffee shop where Java coffee is served. You would see invariably that the location will start to show up, like what are some of the shops around your area, what are the store hours, and similar information which you have not specifically asked for, yet it has been added automatically, assuming that Google feels that every single search is more inclined to get results, or better quality of results will be delivered if it is logically connected with the information of localization of your location, that is, or if it has to do with e-commerce, or if you're looking for services of some sort or a product, it would start to give you more details based on its own intelligence, and assuming that it would give a better user experience. So information like location and store hours will start to come up automatically. So this is this part is the implicit context. And so it just adds on. So if it is a Java island, you could see that you would invariably get results that are talking about tours. It is talking about tourists, and things of this sort, this nature. These are just some of the examples that are set in here in the implicit context box, but there could be a lot more attributes, like lot more information which typically attaches to the primary and secondary context when you've written it explicitly, and where the search feels that it needs to add or assume that previously, some other attributes for the search are considered preferable or are higher ranking. The results would add those attributes and bring those results to you. So that's just to differentiate between explicit context and implicit context. So a lot of times when we are doing our own research work, we don't want, because it's research and therefore it needs to be totally non-biased. It doesn't have to be localized. We want to do global searches. We want to get to the, I guess, content is more important sometimes than the than the localized version of something, or any information for which we don't want any boundaries to hold that back. We need to be able to use certain operators, or just to filter it out, and not to allow for implicit context to be added automatically. So to make it gender neutral, or to neutralize the browser, and that's the first thing that we like to apply by using two techniques. One, of course, is the operators that we use, but the second one is to neutralize the browser through adjustments of it being non-biased and less of a interference from the language perspective, from the localization perspective, perhaps certain type of information coming from a certain source we do not require. We are just going to eliminate that and adjust it either through the browser or through our search queries. So we are basically trying here to do away with or use least of the implicity or intent semantics that's added by the search engine on its own. Implicit factors. One of the factors that you would look at is the language. Now, I don't know if you've checked it out, but if you have inserted in the search box any word which is of another coming from another language, not necessarily English, you would find the results are slightly different. So if you are changing the language of writing some search terms, um, invariably the results would be, coming up slightly different. At the same time, if you are using um, a certain browser, or your preferred browser is not Google, assuming, then the results will be different. It's just depends on some of the techniques that you will use. One of the things that I do when I'm searching for some research papers, um, or especially certain sensitive topics for which, number one, it's very expensive to get the information or find the information in, let's say, North America, or if that requires a lot of, or it is very expensive to get that information, or if those words or search terms are sensitive enough that they're pretty much censored, or you're not allowed to access those researches. When it comes to defense industry searches for, let's say, projectiles, rocket related, or certain words which might be more used in the defense industry and are considered sensitive info, you won't get it in US. So what you do in that situation is that you use another browser. When I say browser, I'm also talking about main browsers that are search engines. Uh, in So coming back to where I cannot find this information, I'm going to use another browser or search engine. Let's say Yandex in Eastern Europe. I know in Eastern Europe, I can get a lot more research papers. More of the libraries are online right now, surprisingly. And some of the research papers are totally free over there. So for me to find that information in Eastern Europe is not only easier, but it is also inexpensive. So I would use Yandex rather as a preferred browser or a search engine. Yandex is a search engine, so I'm going to use their browser to access that info. So the choice of the right browsers or search engines could be another factor that would actually take away that restriction, or selection of it would allow me to get more information, better information. Right now, translation of any research papers is not difficult. You can do it so easily. So language is not really a barrier, but rather it can be used creatively, as I do mostly with certain type of info specifically that I can only find in Eastern Europe, or I can find in um, you know um, third world countries. Certain third world countries, I know what browser is going to fetch me the right results. I would also use VPN to bypass, or just simulate as if I'm browsing locally from that region. So that would give me an access. So there are different ways of getting access to those information types. Now, implicit factors also include culture, censorship, geopolitical situation on the ground, because Google is restricted to provide certain information. Let's say in KSA, or Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, it is pretty much censored for certain words or certain type of info. Similarly, geopolitical situations, especially in war zone countries, or where there is a dictatorship and a lot of censorship, That might be another factor where Google may not be able to deliver as it would like to. So on and so forth. So that is just some of the restrictors, or uh, some of the factors that impact the implicit context. Now there is another part of it which also is responsible for, or is by design going to add the implicit meaning to your search query, and we'll talk about that in the next few charts after we get done with this one. In that area, it is going to look for your short-term and long-term history that's collected, or user behavior plays a lot of part in it. So that would impact your implicit context as well. But for now, I'm just continuing with the previous example, literally like this one that we did. This is explained slightly differently in another chart, as you can see right here. What starts with explicit context when you write things like Java coffee, for example, then there are three variables. One is coffee bar, Tim Hortons, or coffee beans as a context that would become a secondary context. So if the Java coffee bar is what you have to use, or Java coffee Tim Hortons, or Java coffee beans you have to use, you can use all three contexts, or you can add a context or remove context, or expand to your query by adding A and D or operator. We'll talk about that later, but this is just to let you know that there is a way in which you can expand different ways or different types of search phrases that are somewhat similar, or has a theme similar to each other, except that they are worded differently. So you can give that blend to it. But coming down, let's suppose we used Java coffee Tim Hortons. Okay, so what this chart is showing is that there are two type of implicit context it has added. One is search location based, which means if it is Java coffee Tim Hortons, is that if that's what you've written, then it is going to look for the IP address to see your localized available resources, or the shops of Tim Hortons in your postal code based on your IP or city name or whatever else you have. If it's a smartphone, it's going to look at the GPS. Then the second part is the search session, whether it is short-term, long-term information that the search browser collects, will itemize and let you know what is short-term and long-term. But as an example, search session, which is responsible for collecting this type of info, includes from website, if you're looking for costs or prices or reviews or ratings or whatever else you have used as your terms that's added to the primary context previously, would just make that an implied or implicit context automatically, and that history is now going to be responsible for delivering the type of results that you would see. And for this reason, you would find that if two people are browsing from two different locations or two different countries, the results will obviously not be the same, assuming it's the same browser, same search query. So implicit meaning is what is making the results come different for the two individuals. Second thing is that anytime we are doing search, we have to keep refining. What happened? Can you hear me still? Hello?
Yep, I still got you.
Yeah, I think my camera stopped. So no, I won't. I wouldn't know what the reason is, so I'm not going to touch it. But during the break, I'll get this fixed. So if you don't see me visually, and if you can hear me, that should be sufficient for now. The context refinement example is where we are recommending that every single search you do requires improvement. Like it's never absolute. It's always something that we missed out, some words or some structure of our sentence when we put our terms in the search box. Um, and we only find it or we refine it when we look at the search results. It sort of guides us, and we have to keep an eye on the results to see how we can improve it. Certain words we don't need, other words are bringing better results, or there is an alternative words that search engine is suggesting. So all of that would mean that we have to refine our search in the second instance and the third, and as it continues until you get the quality results. So the process is very easily explained here. For instance, if you're looking for or you're using the word jaguar, Jaguar can be a cat, or it could be a car, the brand of Jaguar cars. Um, so, you would know that the search engine is bringing you something which you don't require, meaning that it may bring both results about the cat or car, or the results about cats are coming more frequently, or they're flooding your first few pages, and the word car, that is for the Jaguar brand, is not showing much. So you know that the search engine is now applying its implicity or giving a precedence of for the word cat, which you don't need, versus the word car. So that is the first thing is what you will notice. Second is there could be a word automobile versus the word car. So if the results are substituting the word car with automobile and it is bringing better results, you may want to make a choice or use the word automobile instead of car. Likewise, if car is more frequently bringing results somewhat closer to what you need, then you're going to use the word car instead. And then look up the missing pieces, like if it is bringing results that is not localized, or you need results coming from your local dealer somewhere on Jaguar cars or Jaguar car dealership offices or shops, you're going to use the word local. Or you can use the word near me also, but that's just giving you examples of how you go to different steps to improve and pad up your searches by adding more context. So if the missing context is the price, whereas the word local that you have used does bring the results of location of shops, but it is not giving you prices, and you need to check for the prices before you actually go to the um, uh, to the uh, to the dealership, then you're going to use the word price. And so it continues. What it is saying is through A, B, C, D, E, and F, it is a process where you would keep adding context, and you would want to refine your search through progressively looking at the search results and looking at preferred words or looking at suggestions by the search engine when it shows through drop downs and things like people also search for. All those clues are to be picked up so that your search query is getting better to get you the right results. So that's about as much we like to know about context. Now, I would also emphasize there are certain words which we call power words that you can use to get your results quickly. Remember, search queries, if they're too long, they become lethargic, and sometimes they buckle in, and at times, it is not recommended or preferred. The idea of having short, concise, and accurately um, formed search queries um, are more important and more sturdy, and I guess considered to be more professional, rather than just keep adding context unless it is required. But certain words you can use to replace longer words or explaining it in a language of your choice. But best is to use those power words to make it more concise. Some of the words that we use, you can see that these are in different fonts, but if you look at the ones that are in blue color, these words you can always apply, and we'll do the examples. When we do the examples, you will see. But the word location, area code, map, local, it is giving, these are the kind of words that are making your search more precise by applying the location or giving more specific on the type of info you require. Or if you wrote something like map, it's going to be considered a power word, which gives a lot of meaning to the search by just bringing in the results, that is images or maps, or will guide you into the Google Maps. Near me, anything that you are looking for in a localized situation, for looking for a shop or anything that is closer, even for the jobs, you're going to use the word near me. Now these are two words. Sometimes there is only one word, but near me together, search engine has a way of recognizing these two as a single search term. It wouldn't separate near and me, only because near me now two words are used frequently enough that the search would think of them as having a more profound meaning together, rather than just separate or give it separate meaning as each individual word. If you want to give a range to something, you can write from, and it recognizes dashes. And if you have no space between the dash and the first word and the word that follows the dash, as in the word to, it would be considered as one single search term, or it is understood as a range of something. So you can write from dash to. It would give a parameter. It would give a sort of and could be anything. It could be anything numerics that would give it some sort of extremities of where it starts or where it ends, or in between. Likewise, you can use date dash range, so it will give a date range. Words proximity, this, never mind words proximity. Let me just get rid of this because there is an operator that works with the word proximity. So what used to be there, now search don't want this to be confused anymore. So corrected this. About authors is in orange color. You could see book title, author, idioms. If it is season, occasion, event, you can use these words instead of writing very long search queries. You could just write the word event, for instance, and put the name of the event. It's going to look for it. Mostly it's going to query the softwares which has events listed. It could be a third party, or it could be the event itself. Then you've got calculate, currencies, all in green color. Because this slide is already there in your PDF, you can use it as a reference. But the reason why we are explaining these power words is because it gives a better context, or we call it power words, that serves a greater purpose of building concise queries or powerful queries by just inserting these words. We've done this concept. Now I'd like to talk about the internet search history, the short term and the long term, and what is the difference and how it is collected by the search engine. Let me get rid of this. In fact, I don't need this right now. So there is a let's just start with the chart here. In this chart, what it is showing is how the data is collected, how the data is collected from the user, that is from the browser, and how it is interpreted by the search engine, what part is short term, what part is long term, and what are some of these types of data that is collected under the different headings of or different sets of information. So you have to pay attention to, first of all, the concept of short-term and the long-term browser history. In the search browsers like Google Chrome, it is programmed to collect certain type of information, which is the behavioral information. I'm sorry. It's the taking the class right now. Okay. Okay. Taking the class, excuse me. Hello? 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 Just shutting it off. Sorry about that. So the behavioral history, the preference of a user, the type of data they like to browse most, the products and services they've got in their shopping cart somewhere, the type of social media platform they're using mostly, all that information gets collected. And a part of that information is called a short term or a session history, something which is very recent. When you are browsing through Google Chrome by logging into your Google account, it is starting up a fresh session every single time. But by default, when you get back to your computer or your phones, whatever device you're using, it remains turned on. It pretty much by default is bringing your own environment back for you to start using the browser. So that means that the session is ongoing, or the session has not been terminated, like you have not logged out from your search browser. So any type of history that is collected at the time while the session is turned on is a short-term history usually. Then there is a long-term history which contains information sets, like permanent information, like when you registered with Google account, you gave your personal data. That is a long-term history. Then there is another type of long-term history which is giving surface level knowledge without being intrusive into your private activities of certain type of utilities that are attached to the browser. For instance, if it is your bookmarks, your information about your Gmail account that you've been using, the whatever utilities are there, which allows you to do content management as part of your Chrome browser. All that information is considered to be long term. And I'll tell you, when I say long term, how it applies in this scenario, because your emails are private. So the information about your Gmail account is not intruded. It's not like they're going to look at the details of the emails, or who your sender is, or where you are receiving information or sending. Nothing of that sort. What they are looking at is the trend, like what is the frequency of your use of Gmail box. That is a long-term history. That's just behavioral history. So they're not actually looking at the content and your internal data, but collecting overall usage information. That is a long-term information. And most of that is collected on the search engine side, meaning that it is transmitted for the purposes of their marketing, or for whatever reasons they require it. This long-term history, this part of a long-term history is sent to the search engine site, and it is sorry, it is specific to you as an individual, yet it is collected for overall comparison or making it into the pool of trend analysis, uh, separate set of analytics that happens on the search engine side. While your short-term history, which is going to have an impact on your search results, is collected from short-term use or session uses of your search browser, and that is residing inside of the browser itself. So the browser is going to be sending or be responsible for letting the search engine know that these are the preferences, and therefore advising the search engine to deliver something which corresponds to or which synchronizes or somehow is going to give a better user experience, so that implicity part of the results delivered from the search engine site are are kind of customized, kind of given that precedence of delivering those snippets that are different from the ones that are given to others. As an example, even before we get to this chart, there is one example which will set this concept, um, will give you a better perspective. So for instance, there are, at the time when you're writing your search queries, you are putting those search phrases in the search box. It is at the same time making decision whether the query type is any of these four types of or four formats of queries. For instance, there is one that is called navigational query. So while you're writing something which has a web address or which has a location of where you want to go directly, it is called navigational query. So at the time when the signal is being sent to the search engine to deliver the kind of results which corresponds now to the navigational query, the navigational query is categorized as something which is an absolute, or for which the direction is given by the users with the explicit command. So it knows that it is coming as a navigational query. Second is informational query. Then we have got exploratory and transactional. Let's see what it is. So supposing you wrote something which is phrased in a way or which has the kind of information which says I want to go to that particular location for which I have absolute knowledge and I don't want search engine to worry too much about. So it is a precise information and we know that it's navigational query, and for this reason the search engine is going to deliver results verbatim. Verbatim means it is going to think of those search keywords as more having the absolute address or absolute piece of information that needs to be delivered. So that's how the search engine will respond through the results. As you would see on your search pages, the snippets will show the exact information that you require. Then you've got another set which is called transactional information. So if you wrote something that is asking about a product or a service or a price or any of the wordings for which the search engine is or your browser is programmed to interpret that as the commercial or transactional query, it is going to instruct the search engine that it is coming to you as a transactional query, so deliver results that has information about product and services, and therefore ancillary informations like the context of reviews, opinions, availability, e-commerce portals, websites like Amazon's. All those are going to be delivered on account of the fact that the browser has interpreted it as transactional. And transactional can be of two types. So while the transactional is interpreting your typing while you're typing it, your wordings would show if you want to compare something or you're looking for reviews, so it could be of commercial nature. If you want to purchase something, meaning that you actually want to buy something on account of the fact that you are looking for the best price to buy, or certain words you're using which makes it which makes the transactional query into imminent purchase related query, the search engine will throw slightly different results back to you. Similarly, if you are browsing and looking for information on certain topics, subjects, or about something, checking on the facts, it's going to be informational query, and the search would know based on how you have phrased your search words and your search parameters. It would know if it is informational, meaning that you'll go from one page to another to another. So the search engine is telling the browser is telling the search engine that it is more of an exploratory kind of a query, and therefore the results would have less e-commerce related or product related results, and it would have been interpreted at the same time through one factor, the way you're going to write the query in your search box. Second is based on your sessions or recent sessions, or your search history. It is going to determine exactly the type of results that or would add to the mix by giving instruction to the search engine that look based on his preferences of this person, based on recent history of purchases of certain things, based on recent subjects that this person has been Googling or looking for. It is going to add that mix for the search to look for the results in the background of the search history, as well as the way the search wordings are phrased in your search box. So these 1, 2, 3, 4 are the four sets that gets created early before actually the search would be bringing the results back to you. In the search users data collection side, we can safely, or at least to our best knowledge, there are these three different boxes or sets of information, or the information that is collected both as short term and long term can be distributed under these three headings. One is internet browsing data collection, which is your browsing, your behavior or accessing certain words and looking up certain topics of your interest and so on. So this is your browsing data. Okay, then you've got a profile and personal information, which it has collected already, which is mostly long term. And things like autofill forms is one of the examples. Your passwords are also included in long term. Then there is communication data, your emails, chat, social media, your communication data, basically to the extent where it's not intrusive and getting into your privacy, but just collecting overall information on preferences, uses, time of usage of that communication, communication utility. Could be chats, it could be Gmail, it could be your emails, it could be social media accounts. So all that communication data is also collected and is given both a short term and a long term. It collects it both as short term and long term. Let's just leave it at that. Then we've got internet browsing data collection that has to be short term and a long term. Now, short term, long term, I explained to you. However, there is more details on the left hand side that is giving you some of these context or some of these type of itemized information that has an impact on search results, because this is now become part of the short and a long-term search history. And we are classifying it in the internet browsing as internet browsing data or internet browsing history. So what are these different information sources? One of them is the time and date stamp of your browsing. When do you browse mostly? During the day, afternoon, evenings? The language that you use, preferred language, so it knows the region that you are interested in, or the type of web pages that reside in the localized data centers. That would be addressed. History of saved document, images, videos, so it knows your interest, it knows from the multimedia perspective what you've been collecting, the apps you have downloaded, the location, IP address, incoming referral links. These are all itemized. You can read through them. User's contact name, like on the same machine that could be using, there could be 3 different users using the same machine. So that contact names, ads clicked on, travel information in the past, especially if you paid anything from your saved transactional information, that is also part of the browser history. And so it continues. Okay, so this is a long list, and this is browsing data. Then profile and personal data. Profile and personal data includes your name, photo, whatever you've entered when you were registering your browser. Autofill forms data, schooling, profession, you create your own profile, your own portfolio. That information is profile and personal use. Communication data, data sent, received, even megabits usage of how much of information is, or how much of those utilities are consuming the bandwidths or the transfer of data, how much data is being processed. So that is at a meta level, or at a level where they are collecting it as a long-term history just to improve their marketing, or for product improvements and so on. Then we have another layer after the first one. So we know that these are 3 different areas of information collection. Then we have the second layer, which is use of intent related information. So now in the second layer, once this information is actually living inside of the browser and the search engine is given the long-term history of some certain attributes, the next layer of how the search is going to interpret your intent is by looking at your personalization of the browser, your localization, how frequently you use your localized info, marketing, your trends related advertisements, and so on. So all of those intent related info that is attached to advertisements or something that triggers advertisements will start to show up in your results. If you don't neutralize advertisements, or you think that if you've been searching for products and services, it's not going um, uh, to be bringing results from e-commerce websites, that's not going to happen, because it is automated process. So if I've looked for a certain product more than a few times in my searches during the day or last few days, automatically certain advertisements will start to show up, and even e-commerce sites would start to show up. And similarly, the trends would start to integrate with the searched items automatically. For instance, if it is certain clothing or certain e-commerce sites where I buy my clothes, it is automatically going to bring me the new trends in clothing, and depending on the season of the year, it is automatically going to start bringing those ads or commercial websites to me that are offering those trendy kind of or latest of the products and goods. marketing, all sorts of marketing advertisements will start to show up, meaning that certain marketers who are promoting those specific products which I have googled, that's going to start showing up. Localization and personalization of the browser would also impact the search results. So the intent, after all this data that is in these three boxes is collected, it is going to run the second layer of algorithms, which is what I just mentioned to you, is going to start to apply the implicit context or add context to these searches through the mix of what is there in these three boxes plus what is to be interpreted or integrated or synchronized as intended results or intended attributes that add to the mix of what the search engine already has. This the another mix that it is going to do is to analyze or interpret that intent by giving suggestions. For instance, when the results are seen in the SERP pages, you would see some boxes that says suggestions. There are other boxes that says related searches, autofill forms, people ask thread questions. You have a box that has a bunch of questions. If you click on them, it starts to create that thread. There is autocomplete process. Prediction, where you're typing something, you see that it is suggesting improving by adding certain words and so on. So all that which is a result of what is considered as intent or intent related versus the already gathered information, both long term and short term, are now getting you the results, which brings, in addition to your snippets, other sets of info and certain info which is auto fill forms and auto predict gets formed or are become part of your search results. So this part is analysis or intent translation. Use of intended related info, in what ways it's going to use, that is shown in advertisement, trends, marketing, localization. And then when it is to be analyzed enough that it can bring you the results along with all these attributes of different sets of info that appears on your search pages, that is the third layer of how it is being shown on your SERPs. At the very end, effect on search results is where the search results are going to have two type of effects. One effect is what we call a filter bubble. Filter bubble is explained as the internet filter bubble, we call it, but let's just interpret it as why is this expanding? And okay, thank God, stop. So filter bubble is when two people are searching for the same thing, and it is the same browsers, but the regions are different. The search engine is going to give different set of information to, say, someone in region 2. Corey here is the name of the gentleman. So if it is Corey in region 2, you get different set. Alex in region 1 will get different results. So when those results are appearing different from each other with the same search query in the same browser, it means that the search engine now is making its own mind and using its own wisdom to bring those results to two different people in two different ways. And those restrictions or those biased kind of results, obviously biased for the Google to make it to make it different for two different people searching, is pretty much is controlling the results. And that's where you are placed in a bubble, or you are in an internet bubble, which means you can't break out of it, because Google is the one making decisions for you. So when this happens, or this phenomena, we call internet filter bubble or internet bubble. But coming back here, on the same chart that we were looking at, the filter bubble here means that all the result of all these three layers of interpretation, collection, and analytics of information for the results to come differently, the search engine would definitely put the two users in the filter bubble, and the results will appear different for these two different individuals. So that is just the outcome. Location, legal implication, content settings, don't have to worry about these. These are all covered when we are going to do the context in our next searches, where we are going to talk about legal implications. This part we'll cover in the internet law, and the content setting when we're doing browser adjustments, and the location, like how do you break out of the location bubble. These three elements we are going to explain how to go about in getting out of these barriers, these three different barriers. Short-term history and a long-term history, this is just the definition. Short-term history is limited to a single search session. Consecutive sequence single search, and usually spans a short period of time. So there is this thing about sessions starting, closing, and recent sessions versus sessions that you did like 3 months ago. So the you see, this is more technical than you think. When we talk about short-term history, in reality, from the programmers, from what I know of the algorithms and the structure of how the browser is set, there is an array. Array means that there is some limitation to how much of information the search engine browser is allowed to have, or the arrays are just temporary storage of info that is programmed in the software or the browser software. So sometimes if you do a lot of browsing and you do a lot of sessions coming in and out of it, the volume of that data for someone who is doing extensive browsing would have a less will have a more data, and be given less period of time to be counted as short-term history. Whereas someone who don't use that much, and the arrays or the program itself of the browser is not is empty enough, or it has enough space to collect more info over a longer period of time, even though it will be a short-term history, yet because of the capacity issue, it can be extended to having a short-term memory or short-term data, which would be more than a few days, or could be maybe 30 days or more, versus another person who is using it extensively, and it might have a short-term history of say about 10 days or 8 days. So that makes it difficult to be to be considered in terms of number of days that information is held. It is a give and take between the capacity of the browser for short-term collection of data, um, and for those that are using it more or not using it extensively, they can get a longer period of time to be called as a short-term history. A long-term history applies that the browser recorded search queries that are fairly recent. And the search will apply context as if to connect the search terms from where it was left in recent past. So there is no definite time frame, but long-term history, as I told you, has two dimensions. One is the overview or overall trend and analytics purpose, and the other is recent past, but about long enough that it should be called a long-term history. So there is this short-term and long-term, which is subjective, really. Capacity versus type of information versus the volume of information. So let's finish up. Okay, so when we did this slide, I don't think we looked at or I explained these three different ways of writing your search queries. In the first one, if you wrote things like eBay laptop prices, this is more like a navigational search query. Search would know it's navigational. If it is informational, you can write it like this: Tom Cruise movies. More general but informational. Transactional, mentioning the laptop model and make of it. Okay, so they know that you are doing your commercial searches. So we're going to do predictive. Okay, these slides 71 through 75. We'll do these 4 slides after we get done with proximity search. That's when we're going to actually start to do our searches. We are going to talk about predictive and suggestive and all that. So for now, I'm going to take a 10-15 minutes break, and I'll return back to the search operators, which is our basic search using Boolean operators. So I'm going to start with Booleans after this break. So I'm turning off my mic and my video for now, and I'll see you in a little bit. Okay. Okay, class, everyone, I'm back, and I'd like to start with a new topic. We will look at some Boolean searches and what are some of the ways in which we can apply the A and D, or and not. Those are the 3 Booleans we'll be addressing. But before we do that, let's look at the quotation marks. What are quotes when we are trying to create a search phrase and we want to enforce that, or those words or those search phrases to be matched exactly? We will be using quotation marks, and we'll start with the basics just to see and compare between 2 examples here. You could see example 1 and there's example 2. The difference between single keyword and search phrase. How do we make something appear as a single search phrase instead of individual keywords. So let's suppose in this search box in query 1, we've got 3 words: internet research and specialist. And you could see none of these are placed inside of the quotation marks. They are set one next to another. And individually, each of these words are called keywords only because they can be treated by the search as a single word, or it can combine 2 keywords, or it can put any of these words in any sequence as it pleases. So the search has a way of reacting to the search query when you don't have any of these words placed inside of the quotes. When we write internet research specialists, we are now letting the search engine to decide whether or not it wants to combine any of these two. Let's say internet research or research specialist has more preferred together, or even treat individual words separately, where the content pages may contain any of these words but them not be in the same sequence that they are set, which means internet would be the first word, or research could be the middle word, or the last word. It just depends on how the search would want to make its own choice. So a lot of flexibility when you are just using these words, and it won't maintain the sequence of how they're placed. And at the same time, the combination can be varied. But supposing I want to make these 3 words into a single search term, meaning that all 3 of these have to remain intact the way they are set in the same sequence. Secondly, none of these 3 words may be reshuffled or be substituted or dropped. So in order for me to ensure that all 3 words are to be treated as one single search term and to be matched exactly as it is set, I'm going to put it inside of the quotation marks as if all 3 together form one single search term. So 3 keywords have now become one single search phrase or a single search term. This is where we use quotation marks. I'm sure you must be using quotes quite a bit. It's common knowledge. And something which is considered very basic, but there is so many variations of how the quotation marks respond. And that is what we are going to discuss. So in this chart, you could see that we have 2 different ways of writing these 3 words as a search phrase or keywords. In the first instance, we have used it without putting them within quotes. Underline is irrelevant right now. It's just to just to express that these are individual keywords. So showing you how the search would respond when they are placed like this, you would see that there is a list of different ways in which the search would combine them. In one, what it would do is that by default, it is going to try to keep their sequence intact even when you don't put them within quotation marks. That's a default action, but it is not verbatim, it is not enforced, or it is not mandatory for the search to have all 3 words be responded in the content pages as they are set alongside each other. So by default, that's the first thing it will try to do. Second is that it would have the flexibility to change the sequence of how they are set. So the word specialist can be substituted for the placement, and it would start to move the words, which means the word that was in the last may be in the first place. In the third instance, it would start doing pairing, which means that if it thinks out of these 3, 2 words internet research are more common and more popular together, it would disassociate itself or drop the word specialist from the sequence and look for these two words to be present in the search results and isolate the word specialist, even though it may be present on those documents, but it would not be attached to internet research, or the word specialist may appear somewhere else in the paragraphs or those content pages. In 4 and 5, you would see that the search would also try to substitute certain search terms, meaning that the word internet research is now changed to internet researcher. That's what it might just default to or look for, or it may look for internet search specialist instead of internet research specialist. So it would do its stemming lemmatization function without the constraint of a quotation marks. And so it continues, and it would also make different combination of two words, depending on what it considered popular, easily available, or depending on any other context you've attached to it. It would still like to look for different combinations, because it is pretty much like a loose gun if you don't put these three inside of the quotation. So one variation could be internet research, internet specialist, research specialist. So all these combinations going to happen. So in a way, it is without putting them within quotations, you are letting the search to behave in a manner that is listed 1 through 8. I hope this is clear.
It is.
Now, without quotation marks, when you have used two words like marketing study, for instance, so these two would make the search a little bit, it doesn't have the context which is required. For instance, if these two words outside of the quote, it would mean, if you're looking for marketing study or study marketing, start to do the same behavior as we did earlier. Studying marketing courses, all of these would start to combine and would make your search pretty much distorted. But if you had put the word marketing study within quotation marks, it is certainly going to ensure that these two words are matched exactly the way they are set inside of the quotation marks. Now, what happens if I have the words internet research specialist put inside of the quotation marks? The resulting pages would bring results. As you could see, this is the page that comes up when you run this query. And what it is showing is that these three words are appearing in the same sequence, exactly verbatim as they are inside of the quotation marks. Now, if you use these three words where each word is inside of the quotes, the significance of putting something within quotations is best explained like this. For instance, I'm going to use Notepad as a whiteboard for now. So if I have some internet like this versus you could see that I can even put individual words within quotation marks for a reason. And that reason is that the quotes, even though they are used to create search phrases or one single terms for your search, it also has another function, which means that it enforces individual words to be present in your content pages, which means that it forces individual words to be present mandatorily. So if I have in the first one, as you could see, that there could be so many different results, so many different combinations. So it is more erratic results. Erratic is, I guess, the bet erratic results. But this is concise as is. Okay. In the third instance, supposing that the search results is not bringing pages that have all three words appearing together, yet I would want all three words to be somehow be available on the content page, but not necessarily in the same sequence. What am I supposed to be doing? I'm going to make sure that these individual words are present in the content page wherever they may be. They may not be in the they may not be in the same sequence, but for sure they will have to be returned as mandatory, with mandatory presence in the content pages when I have put each of these within the quotation marks. So if you compare it with 1 and 3, the difference is that the search has the flexibility to drop any of these words, to combine of any of these words together, or to substitute these words, right? But in 3, all three words have to be present. None of these can be dropped, so they have to be mandatorily be returned. Second is that all of these words may not have to be combined together, yet they would have to be present in the search results. So if I compare 1 with 3, 3 will ensure presence of all of these words somewhere on the content page. But comparing 1 and 3 with 2, the difference is that the entire term has to be present in the returned content pages. So this is where I would say that we have to plan our searches to find these words. Now, sometimes, and by the way, the example of number 3, let me show you in this slide. Compare A with B. So A has these 3 together. What B does is that B is going to bring pages from cme.com, whereas these 3 words are coming from checkme.com. So 2 web pages, 2 different websites. It's just distinguishing these 2 different sources of web pages. So when I run this search, I get pages from checkme.com because it is matching 3 words together. But when I do my search putting individual words inside of the quotes, I get results from cme.com, not from checkme.com. Why? Because you could see that the word internet and research and specialist, they're all here on this page, but they are not necessarily in the same sequence, or they may have a combination, but it may not be intact with 3 together as one single search term. So B, if we write a query like in B, we will get results from pages that has the content set as shown and highlighted in yellow, versus when we do our search using these 3 words inside of quotes. So you can see the difference. I hope this explains it. Just give it a minute to look it up and see why they are 2 different. Now, another thing about putting the term within quotes versus putting it outside of the quotes. So if internet research specialist was outside of the quotations, the number of results are far too many. They're not as precise. And when we put it within quotes, we get far less results, which is only 268,000 versus 209 million. So obviously it is trying to match all three and therefore more focused and less results. Okay. So what happens when you don't put certain words within quotation marks? Never mind the font colors, just think of it as three words together forming a search, one search term. The combination that the search engine would prefer or bring results from would be based on how certain words together are more popular, so that you will get a combination of results or results that has more combinations of certain terms or words which together are frequently searched. For instance, when we did this search outside of the quotes, just to learn the behavior of search is going, how search is going to respond, we find that the word internet is preferred over others like specialist and research. So the word internet invariably is going to start to appear in the snippets. When it comes to two words together, you would see that more results are coming from the word internet research and less results that contain the word internet specialist and research specialist. So all these, sometimes we intentionally put those words outside of the quotes just to get an idea of what words are most commonly considered for search as being popular and therefore better results. So not to put them within quotes, just to see the freely available results that give us an idea of what is preferred by the search engine as more popular for this type of search. So internet research were more popular over internet specialist or research specialist. That's just the ranking or the popularity part of it. Now what I would like to also discuss here while we are doing this is certain variations of how we can by choice or manipulate by intent or by design a certain way of writing the queries. I'm going to put a separate it, and I'm going to take an example from here. Sometimes what I would do when I'm doing my searches, I'm going to look for certain words which I think are mandatory or are more essential between these three. The ones we'll continue with the same wordings as an example for consistency. So supposing I feel that I want to have wordings this is the search that I want to do. Now, what I might end up doing is that I might emphasize that search finds these two words together wherever, because these two are most important or primary words. A specialist can be, can be different. It could be, this word can be substituted. So I'm just going to leave it open. I'm not going to enforce it. I'm not going to put it within quotation. I'm going to leave it open and loose by intention. However, the word Los Angeles, is it Angeles or Angeles? Angeles. And supposing I want to make sure that the word Los Angeles is part of my search result because of the location, and I want to run this search. So what I've done is that I have ensured that the word internet research is for sure has to be present. The word specialist can be substituted, or so I've left it open for the search to figure out. The word training can also be substituted, so I'm going to leave it open. Maybe it is, training. Instead of training, there is a word certification, or there is a vocational program, or diploma program, whatever it may be. I'll just leave it open by intention. So in 4, what I'm doing is I'm emphasizing certain words be present, whereas I'm leaving certain words open totally. And there could be other examples which will follow. We will go through them later, but let's just now this is a more important example. These are some of the examples which is giving you an idea, or different examples telling you different situations for putting certain words within quotation marks. So if I'd rather take this example and explain it in the notepad. This is a chemistry formula in number 5. It says 3,6 dash dichloro dash, it's a long one. But can you tell me how many search words are put inside of the quotation marks right now? The best way for me to explain it is to tell you that whenever we leave a gap of a single character or single digit in between the 2 words, that gap acts as a separator that separates 2 words, or they makes it into 2 different words. So supposing if I had just not put any quotations, and these are the words, or these are the search terms, then you could see that none of what is starting from number 3 and ending in carboxylic is considered to be one search term. And where there is a gap of a single character and is followed by the word acid, it means that now it has become 2 search terms. This is one search term, and this is the second search term. So we have to just think of the gaps as a differentiator, or something that separates words or the search phrases or search terms. Okay. Why this is considered to be one single search word is because it does not have a gap in between any of the characters or numbers. You could see that the number 3 with the comma and number 6 has no gaps. There is a dash here, and then it continues. It is actually now leaving no space for this entire term to be broken into or fragmented at all. It is just one single search term. And what will happen if we leave a gap here like this, single digit gap. If you make a mistake in writing something that is one long search term or a formula, as in this case, as shown as an example, and you leave a gap in between, let's say the comma here and the number 6, this gap is going to now separate it into two different terms or two different numbers. There is number 3, then there is number 6, and then when you left a gap of another single character and you put sort of the dash is now no longer connected with number 6. What it is now done is that instead of treating it as a dash, it's going to think of it as a minus sign. So the nature of the search query will change totally. Minus means that it is going to take out everything that is on its right hand side. So you have to be mindful about the gaps when the term has dashes, notations, commas, and so on, and they're connected. The other thing that you have to be mindful about is that the notations or certain notations are considered to be stop words. For example, comma, the question mark, name it, I mean, backslash, all of these are considered as stop words or stop marks. That means the search engine would not accept it, would not consider it as something that is to be interpreted or become part of your search query. So if you have 3 and followed by the comma, what it has done is now ignored the comma totally. It is thinking of this search term as having a number 3 as separate, or this would be one keyword, number 6 would be another keyword, and then there is a minus sign. So this is how it is going to be interpreted. So for anything that has a notations or any stop words that needs to be considered or needs to be enforced, it has to be placed within the quotation marks. So when I have added the quotation marks here, what is it going to do now in 5.1? What it will do is that it will consider this to be one search term, which has to be returned or which has to be part of your has to be part of the content pages. And then the word asset, the search may or may not include in your search results. So it is not mandatorily enforced. So the second word asset is not an absolute word that is being outside of the quotation, is a choice for the search to either consider, bring, or drop. It just is no longer an absolute command here. Any questions on quotation marks? So Steve, you there?
I'm here.
Is this clear?
Yeah, the one question I did have is the comma under 5.1, when you've got 3, 6. Is that the same as a 3 space 6?
No, no. Actually, no, it's not. It's actually what you are looking at right now is something that is placed within the quotes, eh?
Okay,
And
let me go. I'm sorry. Let's say we don't have the quotes.
okay, so let's do that. Let's just put it here. Now we don't have the quotes.
Okay, so if you is what I'm trying to say is the comma a stop word?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Comma is a stop word, but here is the technicality. This is, these are the minor things which have to be understood very clearly when we are going to do our advanced search queries. These little things would matter a lot because it can make or break your search queries. Try to understand one more time. I think I wasn't clear on something. Whenever we don't have a gap in between, see, when we have written something like this without any gaps, there is no stop word in between, okay, because there is no gap and
Okay,
it is not
I
second.
understand. I got it now. Since there is no gap,
Right.
that's not going to, it will return that as a single word.
Right, exactly. But on the other hand, if you had something here that has got a gap like this, for instance, now literally we have 3 search terms or search words. We have number 3, we have this starting from 6 all the way to carboxylic as the second search term, and then we have the third search term is because there is a gap here and we have left a gap here as well.
Now, since you don't have the dash in front of dichloro will not act as a minus because it's got a 6 in front of it.
Yes, exactly. Now you get it exactly. And as far as the stop word, when we have a situation as we just did with 3 search terms, and where you have dissociated the number 3 from 6, or it has now become a 3 search terms as highlighted here. What has happened is that this comma is no longer considered to be acceptable. It's going to be dropped as a stop word only in this situation. So let's just call it C.
And that is because you have a space in front of the 6. So the comma is kind of redundant.
Yes, exactly. Now what has happened is that this 3 is ignored in C. Okay. So it's going to be 3, 6, whatever up till here, and this. There is one way that you can still have 3 search terms and enforce the comma. Do you know what that trick would be? So it does not ignore the comma.
Nope, you got me there. Oh, quotes.
You're going to put 3 with the comma within quotes. See this?
Makes sense.
Now this comma is enforced. What a quotation mark does is that it makes the search look for anything inside of it, no matter it could be a combination of stop words, whatever you put inside of it, any symbols, notations, it is supposed to find the mirror image of exactly everything that is placed inside of the quotations. So it is a restrainer. It is something that now pushes for the search to find everything verbatim, whatever is enclosed in it. So if yeah.
So it's going to find any instance of a text that has 3 and a comma after it.
Yeah. Yes. it's going to find everything inside of it. We'll see, there's plenty of examples that will come, you'll come across, which will actually give you a better or clearer picture with some other variations that includes this this point of matching everything as a mirror image, and we'll see those examples very soon. I'll show you. So we did example 1. Now, see, I use Notepad because it gives me flexibility and allows me to write certain variations or certain possibilities which are not in the slides.
This
And by
makes it
the
much
way,
easier to understand.
yes, exact. And I can also put these as notes in your class folders. So it acts as a reminder. You could see some of the examples we did in the class. You don't have to write them. This is why I'm going to use this as notes.
What I'm doing right now is taking screenshots of what you put up here, and I save that actually as a PowerPoint.
Okay, you can do that too. And yeah, that's fine. But at the same time, know that I'm putting these as notes in your folders. So this is more like classwork and practical examples, so that you don't really have to write these queries, is what I'm saying. This part you will have it in your Dropbox. Another example I'm going to now look up. Is it viewable? Is it large enough fonts? I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
You can see that, right? Okay, so one of the ways that I have, in fact, let me just separate it so that there is no confusion. Hang in there, just give me a moment. Okay, so there is this query where I have written bold and beautiful. I think it's a opera. It used to be, it's a program or soap opera at one time. So supposing I want to find the bold and the beautiful, I think that was the name of it. I want to look for the season 1, episode 6. Okay. So what I could do is, I don't have to write episode 1 or season 1 or episode 6. I could just write 1-6. Okay. The reason is that the search has somehow been able to look at relationship, that certain way of writing for mentioning or querying the episodes and things to do with movies and these TV series. It knows that 1-6 or 1/6 or 1/6 or 1. So all these different numbers has a meaning with relationship to what you're looking for. So if it is bold and the beautiful, the search knows through its machine learning that it is a famous soap opera, and 1-6, it is going to consider one as as we look at the seasons. So it's going to consider 1 as a season and 6 being part of it, or sixth part of 1 as the the episode of that season. So it has the ability to interpret it not as 1-6 or 1-6 as just a meaningless notations or numbers, but rather it's going to treat this as the sixth part of 1, and which in this case automatically is going to bring you episode 1, season 1, episode 6. All right. But bold and the beautiful we have put inside of the quotation marks, whereas 1-6 we have left it out because it can also be written as 1/6. When you have different ways of writing the same thing, you usually don't put it within quotes, so to give it more flexibility. So bold and beautiful episode, season 1, episode 6, and 1/6 is again episode season 1, episode 6. You can also emphasize or put 1-6 or 1/6 within quotation marks. So to enforce that bold and the beautiful be there as the search term, and 1-6 appears as is verbatim. So the only thing is that I would rather avoid this way of writing. Do not restrain it as is. So because certain terms are automatically understood, and I told you with the 1-6 and 1/6 with relationship to the play, it automatically means episode and the season. So if I put it within quotation marks, I'm actually making it into a number, or making it appear where it would mandatorily have 1-6 as a mirror image. Instead of interpreting it as episode and season, it would be a restrictor that would make your search even worse if you are going to use these type of symbols and notations, which already is assumed to have a context without having to put it within quotes. I don't know if I am able to explain it or not, but from my point of view, I'd say that the restraint or anything that is assumed to have a meaning already, you should not put it within quotes to make it verbatim, but rather to leave it outside of the quotes for free interpretation by the search engine. So in this case, I would prefer not to use, let's just call it A, B. I would rather not use B, and I would not put something as is shown in C.
C has now confused the Boolean logic because the search will be looking for bold and beautiful 1/6 as an element, and it will not distinguish and say bold and beautiful, which it was looking for originally.
Exactly, that's one explanation, and there is another reason. This next reason is, let's suppose this statement or everything that has got a sequence now mandatorily have to be maintained as it is written, being within the quotes, may not be the exact wording or may not be the exact way how it is mentioned on the content page. So if it does not connect exactly the way it is written, it is just not going to bring any page, or it's just going to drop those pages. So normally nobody writes bold and beautiful 1/6, do they? They don't. Like, so there is a logic of how certain words or certain search phrases or certain title are mentioned, and they may not have a continuation with certain words which may be incorrect English, or may not be logically be or considered as commonly written the way you have mentioned inside of the quotes. And therefore when there is no match, it's just going to throw that away and not bring you the page. So this is incorrect, avoid, and 6 and A both are good enough. Mila, you there?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Are you able to? I mean, I know Steve and I were discussing quite a bit, and I'm sorry I didn't attend to you or ask you if you are able to understand all that we just discussing, or if you had any questions. And Coral also. Coral, if you need some extra assistance with this information, I can send you some notes which would be more easy to interpret and understand. So I'll send you those separately, okay, to your email.
Thank you. I
Regarding
think
this.
I'm all set. I think it is like a matter of just being careful with the details when you're making those searches, because I do get it. It's just making sure that even those little minor details are attended to, because it can actually like drastically change the results you get returned. I think.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that's one part. The most important is if you are able to understand it exactly how it is explained, because at times it's you know um, communication could be a barrier as well. So just making sure that it is understood in the same sense as I'm explaining it, and that's the main thing. So anyway, I think we've done enough on quotation marks. There would be quite a bit we learn on quotations, because this is something that will go along with these concepts. We are going to apply in complex search queries. Be very selective in how we're going to put certain words within quotes. We also have to learn where we are not getting results as expected. Maybe we need to open up certain search phrases a little bit, make few words more mandatory, common words that we think we don't necessarily need to place in quotations. We can leave them out. So make that choice of how we are going to phrase things and put or use the quotes is going to be very important for us. One thing I'll caution you, I don't even know if it's in the book, but remember how we put things within quotes. At times, if we have got like more than a few search phrases that are within quotation marks and we are typing, sometimes we leave quotation marks open, as if, and because they are very small fonts when we're writing it, they remain open or they don't remain closed, or somehow they attach with the previous character or word that we separated it from originally. It just somehow remains open-ended, and it does not actually put the quotation marks open and quotation marks close, um, you know, uh, because we are unable to see them sometimes. Um, just as an example, I mean, what can I tell you? Just take an example over here. So supposing we are writing something like this. Now, what happens in the search box, if we had it written like, and we think the next term within quotation, we tend to leave this as open-ended, or it is not closed. I mean, Notepad does not allow me to do it. I have to use the word processor. So, but assume or think or visualize if this was open quotes and it was somehow you forgot to put this thing within quotes and this remained to be open quotes, what will happen to the bold and beautiful? It won't be considered as a single search term, only because this quotation mark has remained open, has become a closed quotation mark, and you have another closed quotation mark at the end. So it is not ideally putting the entire term within quotes. It is leaving it out as if there are two sets of open quotation notations or quotation marks. So if this was open quotation, this was open quotation, then the both of these bold and beautiful, they will not be considered single search term. And it happens a lot when we are doing our typing or we are hastily writing something. Your quotation mark opens, just instead of remaining open, it just marks the symbol as open and not, I'm sorry, as closed quotes. Anyway, I don't know how else to explain it, but when we run into quotes situations, you will see that it is a common mistake, and a mistake that costs a lot, really. Just because they're very small fonts, you don't go close and look at if it was quotation open or quotation closed, if it is been written correctly or not. So that's why I'm saying you have to be careful. Okay, example 3, 4, and 5. These are important examples. We're going to do this in our next class. This part we have done, explained already. And I think then we can start with the Boolean A and D operators. I don't know if you know, but Google does not promote or suggest to use A and D operator in Booleans for for creating those search queries, only because it thinks that the quotes itself would replace the A and D. So there is no need for you to use A and D anymore. Or we use A and D occasionally, and it's not something that we, in our own searches, even in examples that you'll see in the book, we don't use A and D a lot. Instead, we replace it with the quotation marks. So that concept I'm going to explain as well, because there is a limitation of what A and D can do versus what quotes can do. Using quotes is always a better option than using A and D. So many of the searches you won't find A and Ds we have applied in the examples in the book. So I'll explain that to you in our next class. So when is our next class going to be? Do you have the schedule?
Monday.
All right. Okay. So hopefully by that time I would have recovered, because I have a bad flu, and my mind is not as clear. So Monday it'll be a lot better. I hopefully I will be able to finish up the. I want to finish up the quotes and A and D on Monday, and I feel that if you have a weekend coming, maybe you can spend some time in going through these pages in the book. I can tell you what pages you would might want to look up. So we've got page 80 through don't have to go to R. So page 80 to page 87, okay, where it says Google removes usefulness of Boolean A and D plus sign. So 80 through 87, so it's just 6 or 7 pages. If you get a chance, please read it. And then when we meet on Monday, I'll be covering these topics mostly. All right. So all good.
Hope you feel better.
Yeah, I hope you
Thank you
feel
very
better.
much. I'm sorry I wasn't like really able to. There's a lot of buzz in my brains right now, because how cold is. It just sort of makes your brain work very slow. So Monday, all fresh, all charged up, and look forward to it. So have a great weekend and stay safe. Thanks.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye bye.